So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or wherever you're connecting from, colleagues. Great to have you today on the webinar on global assets management solutions. My name is Luis Diego Cobb. I work with the Development Coordination Office in New York. And just to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible, I'll give a brief visual description of myself. I'm a Latinx man. I'm wearing a white shirt and I have short black hair, sitting in my home in New York, and glad to be connecting today with this webinar on high impact common services for the business operation strategy. Before beginning, I'll give a few housekeeping notes. As posted on the chat, this event adheres to the code of conduct to prevent harassment, including sexual harassment. You can refer to the code of conduct in the link. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the webinar. We'll be answering as best as we can, and we'll also follow up with an FAQ document afterwards in case we don't address any question. And so you can use that as well as reference. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording and additional resources after the webinar. Closed captioning is also available. If you click on the 3 dots or on the CC icon, you should be able to have the live transcription as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. As mentioned, the topic today is the global assets management solutions, which is meant really to enhance the disposal and reduce the total cost of ownership and disposal of fleets and other assets, such as IT equipment and other office equipment as well. The asset management solutions, as you'll hear in a few seconds, has a global physical presence, and it offers regional coverage in more than 70 countries. This webinar is meant to support OMTs and help reduce the cost of storage, disposal transactions, and increase the benefits from disposal of assets in a much more cumulative or professional way to increase residual value. Today we have Israel Carrizales, who is the head of asset management and fleet maintenance unit at UNHCR. And we also have with us Sanya Vujic, asset management supply officer. So before handing over to them, I would like to go really quickly over high impact common services, what they are, how they can help you drive impact through the operations. You might have heard of these already, so I'll go fairly quickly. As you know, with the business operation strategy in place in 131 country teams, we're able to really have a bird's eye view of which countries are driving the most impact. And we divided or defined impact in several aspects. The first one being very straightforward, which are the ones that have the highest cost avoidance. And these are the top 10 to 15 services. And I'll show them in a second in the next slide, which are those, which you can see on your BOS online platform. We also have good practices, such as digital bookings, management of fleets, or the webinar topic today, the global disposal services, practices from other entities that could be scaled globally to other entities as well. We have also the services that are focused on social impact. So we have gender inclusive services like gender responsive procurement, gender inclusion and gender parity in staffing and HR. We have a series of services, and we also have created several practice and guidance documents on disability inclusion. So focused on inclusive HR, physical accessibility, how can we really create a more inclusive environment for persons with disabilities, and general inclusion in staffing. And we also have the renewable and sustainable practices. So we focused on solar energy, and we'll also be scaling and also promoting and supporting green and sustainable practices throughout operations, so including from waste management to different behavioral change that we can do in our offices to be able to become more inclusive. So in the next slide, I have the way that we divided the different high impact common services. On the left are the top 10 high cost avoidance services that, as I mentioned, pretty straightforward. Some of them are pretty common sense. Some may or may not be as applicable for some countries, but you can see this directly on the online platform. On the right, we have the set of different focus areas of impact throughout operations, and really we feel it's the new generation of operations, whereas traditional operations is very siloed from programming. Here we see kind of an intermingling intersection where operations can also drive programming and not only create operations that are walking the talk of the UN, but also generate impact outside of the walls of the UN, right? So imagine whether it's NGOs or governments looking at the UN and really using it as a gold standard or practice of how they can also create change. So extending that reach beyond only the UN walls. So we have also facilitated the implementation of these services in different ways. I know you've seen practice notes. I put the practice note of the global assets management solutions in the chat, and you can refer to that as well. The idea is to facilitate as much as possible. And please let us know if you'd like other information, and we'll also leave the contact information of both Israel and Stania. We have also facilitated seed funding. So realizing that a lot of the times funding can be an obstacle, especially when first implementing the solutions. We have here on the left the business cases that we funded in about 12 countries to be able to create a concrete business case with return on investment required, and benefits expected for implementing solar solutions, so that it could create a more solid case for the implementation. We also have on the right the disability inclusion that may not have a direct cost avoidance or cost related benefit, but definitely a large social impact, and being able to facilitate that impact through seed funding and in these three areas that I mentioned. So physical accessibility, making our premises more accessible to not only staff persons with disabilities, but to be able to host events that are inclusive, invite different organizations of persons with disabilities, have digital accessibility. So most of our work is being done digitally, from recruitment to the application process, to the onboarding and the regular day-to-day work, and to be able to create inclusive HR practices that create an inclusive environment. So we still have funding for the business cases. If you are looking to install solar solutions in your premises, reach out to us. We can help you create that business case to facilitate the implementation, as well as we'll be working with different disability inclusion countries. So all these services are in the BOS platform. We realize you completed the annual review recently. You are welcome as well to include all these services within the annual review process, so next January 2023, and include whichever services are of relevance to your country office, and particularly the global disposal services of the topic that we're discussing today. This helps us track and know how many entities are collaborating, what benefits are expected, and to be able to scale more, to be able to also support the resource mobilization. So we encourage you to do that. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Israel, who will be leading us today in the webinar. Israel, thank you for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Luis Diego. And I will introduce shortly my team. I want to be a little bit descriptive, as you did, Diego. So I'll try a very generic description. So Tamas Robert, he's working with us in Hungary, in the team that we have the headquarters, and he's helping with the coordination of interagency activities. Sania Vujic, she's the most senior staff in the unit. I think she's been here the longest, and she's also sitting in Budapest. My name is Israel Carrizales. I'm heading the unit. Short description, also a Latino as Diego, and I've been living outside of Mexico for half my life. So about 22, almost 23 years that I've been living abroad in different countries. So with that introduction, I'm happy to see, Diego, that you have our asset management solutions at some of the examples of good and high impact common services. I think it's good to be there on the good examples of your slides. And I also saw the carpooling that we were doing in Lebanon, that it has been something we have been working for in the last years, and it has finally taken off. We have several agencies joining, but again, this is not the topic of this meeting. So let's get into the presentation. I'm just going to start sharing my screen, and let me know if it is visible for everyone.
Yes, we can see it.
Good, good, thank you. So yeah, we have started this since 2013, when there was an initiative to start centralizing the services, initially only within UNHCR. And we did this by gathering a group of people, and they later became the specialists on organizing disposals, how to manage the surplus and everything that we have, either when an operation is downsizing or when an operation is moving or just completely closing down. The most volume that we have is basically vehicles, because vehicles, they get renewed every certain amount of years, and this is the constant in all of these disposals that we have. Now, what we did and what we have been creating since the last years is we have been learning from different countries, from different tax, political, customs, trading, and commercial systems and different contexts around the world that have given us a lot of knowledge on how to do disposals, how to make them transparent, how to make them reliable, and how to make this a predictable process, and most of all, to make it safe for our staff as well. Now, this is something that we have performed several studies in, and it has been shown, and all the data points out that what helps decreasing the total cost of ownership of your assets, and this is specifically for vehicles, because this represents most of the value that you have in assets, is by doing the resale at the end of life. And this has been proven to be the most effective measure to reduce the cost per vehicle. And so how do we do this? And how do we manage to do this? We have people and processes, and they cannot live without each other. So we do have defined processes for different kind of disposal methods and in different contexts. And this is done by defining the different steps, the different people that is involved, and to what degree they are involved. So we can have different players, such as the country office, we have an auctioneer, we can have the auction supervisor, which is in this case our team in UNHCR. And you can also have other parties involved, but these are the main characters that are playing a role in the whole process. So depending on the kind of disposal, the method that you're using, this will be a different role that they're playing. And the timing might also be different. And also the level of involvement might be different. And by different kind of disposal methods, so I'm going back to this slide. I'm talking about either doing a public auction, doing a seal bid, doing an online auction, or shipping vehicles abroad for redeployment. These are all ways of disposing of vehicles. Now, today we are sharing our calendar, and this is something that we do in a periodical way. Tamas is right now distributing this every other week. We have our contacts, we have our let's say our focal points for every agency that has expressed their interest or that have participated in one point in time in one of our disposals. So we share with them the calendar that we have. This is a very short view of the calendar that you have on your screen, but we normally have a little bit more than 110 disposals per year around the world. Now, we normally use the input from different agencies. We have right now 4 different agencies where we have a global SLA, and they always turn to us when it comes to disposals. So these agencies, most of them would provide us with their disposal needs, and this is basically an indication of where do they need to dispose of what and when. So these are the key questions: where, what, and when. So if we have this information, then we can add this into our disposal plan, what we call is our auction calendar, and we would use it to create new events. There is also the opportunity for an agency to ask for an exclusive event. That is what we call a standalone, and that is the agency coming directly to us and asking us, can you please organize an auction in for example, Haiti. We're doing one for WFP very soon. This is the second one we do in Haiti. So this is a country where we do not exist as UNHCR. We haven't had operations in that country since 2017, so that's about 5 years ago. But we do cater for this specific request. Now, of course, we need to consider that we need to have a specific volume to make sure that it is worth to do the organization of this based on the volume and the expected revenue. Now, if I go to the next auction, sorry, to the next slide, this is where we are today. We have the largest part of the team is in Budapest. That's where we have 10 people, but we also serve Asia and any other region that requires support from Budapest. We have also a team in Amman. In Nairobi, we have the largest team after Budapest. Then we have also another team in Dakar, and we have one in Panama. So this is something that we do have that global presence, but we are very proud to say that we have the local knowledge. So it's not enough just to be present and to be able to reach there. You need to know the regulation. You need to know the tax, the financial rules, the commercial practices, anything that has to do with selling and disposing of your assets. This is something that we also care for when doing this disposals. Now, in order to do this, we have more than 45 different contracts with auctioneers that cover more than 70 countries. This is currently growing because we keep expanding our services. And when one of our client agencies asks us to do an auction where we don't exist, we just develop the contract. So we do the procurement part, then we do the contracting, and then we go and perform the auction. Now, how do we prepare for this? So having all that contractual part behind, we identify the assets to be sold. So this can be light vehicles, heavy, ICT, other equipment. We do have some equipment that we do not sell. Sorry, let me go back. I don't have this slide right now in here, but we do not sell military equipment. We do not sell hazmat, so anything that can be considered an environmental waste, we do not sell it. And so there are some very, very basic rules of what we're not selling, and most of them are related to common sense. But otherwise, we would sell everything that needs to be sold. Now, how do we determine the suitable auction type? Is we need to have in consideration several factors: security, how far it is, the number of assets, are there any local restrictions, the market situation. The local restriction was for the political restriction or access restriction. Finding this, then we can define what method can we use for this auction. Either it's a public auction, seal bid, or an online auction. There is an impact, of course, in the revenue that we are expecting from these different methods, and this is it's a proven experience we have had on the different disposal methods. So, as I mentioned earlier, our disposal strategy is basically based on mainly on what we have to sell the next year. So that means that at the end of September, we will start gathering information that we have from our operations and our central systems on where do we need to sell our assets. So first we start with where do we need to sell them. We identify what do we need to sell, and then we put a date, a tentative date. So then we will have the where, what, and when. And then we do a distribution of the different disposals that we have in the world to the team that we have. And we try to make sure that there's not any overlaps and there's not a clash. And this is why we also ask our client agencies to provide us with information well ahead in time, because this plan is created in October the year before. So if we don't have information from your agency, then we might need to squeeze that request, and we're not sure that we will be able to do it. It all depends on the time of the year and the availability of the resources. So as you can see, most of our activities are concentrated in MENA and the Africa region. And this is for UNHCR. There are other agencies where their concentration is in different regions of the world. Now, the disposal strategy, as I said, we identify where, what, and when, and we share it between the team members. Then we start doing the whole disposal strategy. Do we have documentation? This is mainly preparations. Do we have an auction site? Do we need to transport assets to the auction site? We prepare the advertisements. We make sure that based on the expected audience, the expected amount of participants, we also work on the security, and then we do the travel, basically. So once this is done, this is just an example of an auction, and this was in the Middle East. I think this was must have been Pakistan, if I remember well. I'm going to show you a video as well of an auction that we had. This is in Uganda, and please let me know if you are not hearing the audio of this video.
Toyota Land Cruiser, lot number 9 Toyota Station Wagon, lot number 9. Okay, 10 million. 11, 10 million. 13, 13, 14, 14 million. 19, 22, 24, 25, 26, 26, 30, 32, 35, 500, 37, 37,
Good. So just close this. So what happens during the auction day is we manage the site logistics, access management. We during the viewing period, we allow people to come in an orderly manner, and they need to be as well registered. And once we have participants that have decided to be part of this auction, then they need to register themselves, they need to pay the participation fees, and we have a crowd control. And this is something that we try to be very strict on, because we've noticed that if we allow everybody to go in to our events, it will just get massively crowded, because people are curious and they want to know what's happening. So if you don't have a participation ticket, if you haven't paid for your participation, you cannot access the event during the auction day. Everything before the viewing period is free to come in. You need to register. You need to be screened at the door. Then at the auction day, we do the recording of the awarded bids. Those items where we can issue the bill of sale, we do the issuance of the bill of sale, and we release those assets that can be released and that are not due for any additional tax. So for those assets that need to pay any kind of tax by the buyer, then we wait for the buyers to do first the payment of the assets to us, then to do the applicable taxes that are valid in that country, and only then we will deliver and hand over the vehicles. That's when, let's say when the process will finalize. Now, the proceeds and the revenues, so that's after the auction date. Sorry, let me go back. So the proceeds and the what every agency would get, we have a generic fee, an administration fee that is 8%. So that is 8% of the gross, and that 8% that we take of the gross that we sell for you is going to cover everything that you heard in the previous slides. So the yard, the yard, security, advertisement, the procurement that we do for the different auctioneers, and our staff's time as well. So there is also another charging method, and that is basically that there's a fixed amount for the auction of $26,000, and then you pay on your a proportion of the lots that belong to you. This is an option that is not the preferred one by the agencies. Today, there's only one agency that uses that alternative. All the other agencies have chosen to go with the 8%. And so this is the most common, is the easiest one, and the one that agencies seem to be preferring as it gives the most return. Now, let me go to the next page, just to give a short example in what we can sell. This is in Uganda, Kampala. What we have laying on our yard is something that can be sold. And this is money that is coming back to our operation. We can use it again, and it enables, and that's the word I like to use. It enables our operations to be more cost efficient, to be able to reuse that $1 they got at the very beginning from that donor and make sure that they get at least half of that dollar when the asset is no longer needed. Now, in Jamena, Chad, this is a truck that was sold more than I think it was more than 30 years after. Yeah, it was more than 30 years old, and you still get some return. So these are very clear examples of stuff that we have laying around in our yards that is just rotten. It's taking space. It's taking. It's just rotting in our operation. We still can sell it. Of course, we have some very nice prices of vehicles that you would not give more than $5, but there is a value for all of these items, for all these items and assets to be resold and to recover part of that cost at the end of the life. Now, what we do after the auction closure is what I said at the very beginning. We have very well-established processes. We have everything documented, and we make sure that it is transparent and that we can trace back everything. And if we need to have an audit, we have had several audits internally in UNHCR, and we haven't had any single remark when it comes to auction and the disposal process. But this is something that is also needed for other agencies. These are some of the impressions that we have received from different client agencies. And I'm just, while we read this slide, I'm checking very quickly the chat to see if I'm missing any questions here. I see that Sania is already providing some of the answers. And so I just explained the part of the charging method. So that means that if the agencies have two alternatives: to go for the 8% of the gross. So that means that UNHCR's administrative fee is 8% of the gross that we sell for the agency. Apologies. And the other alternative is to have a proportion of a fixed cost that is $26,000. And as I said, all of our agencies prefer the 8%. There is only one agency that is using the lot proportion. and all of the others find the 8% being straightforward and easier and more convenient when it comes to revenue. And good. So yeah, there's also a question in here of buyers pulling back from the auction. It's not as easy as it sounds. There is a security deposit in most of our auctions, so if they pull out, they will lose $1,000 in the case of vehicles. So it's not that easy to pull out. And let me see. Now I'm going back to the slides here. And yeah, so again, some of the comments that we have received from different agencies, and one of the parts that I think is very appreciated by the agencies is the fact that their local staff do not need to be involved in organizing a local auction. And why this would be the most natural or the most logical way to do things, to have someone arranged locally. In many of the contexts where we operate, this actually represents a risk for our local staff to either receive threats or be subject of extortion because of them being part of the local community, and the local community wanting to get an advantage, wanting to get ahead on that disposal, on that auction process. And we've experienced in the past, before we started this operation, we experienced in the past that our local staff was put at risk. They were put in a very exposed situation that was not good for them and was not good for their family either. So this is one of the main advantages, to have this organized centrally and by someone that is not physically in the country. So let me see. And this is the last slide. So in here you will also get a copy of the presentation, and in here you have also some email addresses that you can direct your questions to. Today we have a global agreement with UNFPA, with FAO, with OCHA, and with WFP. So if you're one of these organizations, you're already part of this global service level agreement, and we're already offering this service to your organization. If you want to become part of it, there is also 2 ways to participate, and you can either go for a one-off. That means that you will see in one of our auction calendar an auction that you're interested to participate in, then you will be able to join that, or your office will be able to join that on a one-off. So that's basically a contract that is only for that specific event. And this is something that we have been doing as well for I believe 6 years. We have been doing this. Or if you want to approach us from a central level to have a global service level agreement that covers the whole organization, this is also the way to get in touch with us. Do we have any other questions? I see some questions in the chat that are being answered by Sania, a little bit more technical, but the answers are being given in there.
We do.
Yes.
We do, Israel. We have a couple of questions. Sania has done a great job in answering them.
Yeah.
We also want to encourage participants to raise their hand and ask a question directly, sure, if you prefer that, to interact. We think it's one of the greatest things about the webinar and having the specialists, sure, on the call. And if not, I can also address some of the questions perhaps that haven't been addressed or that you can expand a bit more on. So some of the newer questions that perhaps haven't been answered yet. One of them is asking what the organization do in case who prepared all the process for buying the vehicle. I think he's asking what is the organization that is preparing the process? What do they do in buying the vehicle, if I understand correctly? And I'll ask.
I think
To me, it sounded in connection with the previous
Okay.
question of the same participant about if one of the bidders provide a higher price and then they withdraw. So I explained which type of, if it's public auction, if it's sealed bid auction, and I understand that this is in connection to that, but maybe Mohammed can confirm if this is correct understanding.
Okay.
So I don't know, but in general organization, you have to prepare the list, and then depending on the country, you follow the procedure. So we have to apply for the Ministry of Finance approval or the Revenue Authority approval. So before each sale, we check all these documents, and only once we have all, I'm talking mainly about vehicles because are the high value assets, then we start with sale, and mainly all UN vehicles are duty-free sold, which I also explained. So the buyers or even sign the participation agreement where they confirm that it is their duty to go with the bill of sale after the auction, after the fulfilled payment. They go and they pay the taxes, duties, and once they present these documents to us, then the vehicles are released.
Yeah, so basically we're dependent on the agencies to do this because we don't have the authority. This is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who is doing the approval, so it needs to be done by the agency. So let me just go quickly through some of the questions here. And I see here one question that is okay, this is the question that we just addressed, the one from Mohammed. Then
also, Israel,
yep.
Sorry, there were 3 hands raised as well. Whenever you would like to address that as well, we can open the floor.
Okay, just give me 1 minute to answer these questions. It's just going to take 1 minute because I already saw several of them. And so this question from Andre, what about the internal sales to allow local staff to make acquisition of the assets, vehicles in particular? It comes down to the UN agency internal policies. We don't decide on that. This is the UN agency internal policies. We do in UNHCR, we do not encourage our staff to participate in the auctions. And this is because it just does not look good that our own staff, many times they come with the visibility, a shirt or a cap, and it just creates confusion to the audience. And this question, the next one is also on terms of disposal from Asefa Gebreselassie. The auction is not the only way. There's several ways of disposal. And again, this depends on the UN agencies' internal policies. Now, the other question from Eliana, do we vet the buyers in any way? Yes, we do have a requirement for all of our auctioneers to screen all of our buyers against, there's a list called the denied person list that is issued by the UN and the US government, where we normally screen the buyers against. So this is a request that we have in our contracts with all of our auctioneers. Now the next question in here, due to payment. Okay, that's answered. We do not bear. Sorry.
How does UNHCR handle the disposal of telecommunication equipment, satellite, VHF, radios, drones?
Okay, wait, that's the one question. That's one question. Yeah, after. So who will bear the cost of shipment to Kenya if we are selling from Somalia? That's the agency. We don't cover costs of transport to the auction site. This is covered by the own agencies. And telecommunication equipment, this is something that at least in UNHCR, we do not sell our telecom equipment because this is a risk of other people having access to our communication channels. And unless you have a way to format that equipment and to make sure that it's cleaned up, then it's the decision of the agency. But we at UNHCR, we do not sell that equipment, not our own equipment. So now I think that was the other question. Now I think we can go to the hands raised in the panel. Luis.
Sure. So Ahmad Abu Laban, I think you've had your hand raised throughout the webinar. Not sure if that was a typo or a finger, but I'm opening up the floor for you to ask a question. Please go ahead. Ahmad, the floor is yours.
No, sorry, I did not write my name.
No worries.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we have Jenner Buck as well. So Jenner, the floor is yours.
Many thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, my background is a little bit noisy. I'm in the office. So I work for UNOPS in Sierra Leone. And I'm also both the ICT and the asset focal points. So I deal mainly with assets for the country office. And one of the questions that has repeatedly come up before, I think I may have reached out to the team before on that, is the disposal of one ICT assets. I know it's related a bit to the question of the telecommunications equipment, but also what came up during our UNCT meetings is disposal of renewable energy assets. For example, batteries, when they are no longer used, how do we safely dispose of these assets, whether it's by resale or a way of having them disposed of that in an environmentally friendly manner. I'm not sure if this is within the scope of UNHCR's disposal services, but as part of disposal or asset management, we find out that disposals are usually not planned for, and they usually come with a cost. So we are trying to look into ways where we can have disposal services for some of these assets. And they include both IT assets and also even vehicles, which I know is within your scope, and also now renewable energy related assets. So that is my question.
Yeah. No, actually, this is what I mentioned at the beginning, that we do ask the agencies to at least give us an indication of what do they need to dispose, where do they need to dispose it, and when. So based on this, then we can try to assist and help. Many times we have a calendar that, let's say, for example, a country in an auction that we had planned to do in Manila in the Philippines, we just don't put it in the calendar because we don't have enough assets. But oftentimes when an agency comes to us with a request, then we can reach a certain number of assets to justify that disposal to be done. So this is why it is important to get this information in advance. And there's UNFPA is doing a great job by distributing this information to all of their operations. They get answers back, and then we are able to plan ahead instead of trying to always react to the request. Now, when it comes to renewable energy items, we are in the process of greening our operations, greening our facilities, and we're at a very young phase. So at this moment, we haven't faced what you are mentioning to be to require to dispose of this kind of material, specifically batteries, because in the past years, any kind of batteries are not part of our disposals because these are considered hazmat. So we normally suggest our operations to direct these disposals through the local channels. So some countries would have these recycling channels that we can use, but we do not want to be selling this in our auctions because it's considered hazardous material. Is that answering your question?
Yes, a bit, but also because I know, because of the shared BOS that we're having in country, all of the UN agencies, UNFPA, WHO, UNDP, UNICEF, you name it, all of us are coming together and trying to come up with solutions to our common problems. And one of them actually is the disposal of ICT related items. So for example, printer used items like toners, spent toners, and this and that. In country, we do not have a recycling, we do not have any company that does recycling at the moment. So it poses a bit of a challenge because even though we practice segregation of some of these items, but we know the asset disposal companies just go and dump them all probably in one landfill, which is not good for the environment. So this is why we are looking at having options where we can have some kind of a disposal of some of these items. But I think I'll go back to the team and share this, and hopefully maybe we would have something that would work for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Diego?
Thank you. And I don't see any hand raised at the moment, but if you do have any last minute question, you can still raise your hand. We can take perhaps one more question. In the meantime, I think we can put the contact information, both Israel and Sanya and the Global Assets Management Solutions team, as well as you can find that in the practice note that we shared. And as we mentioned, we'll be following up with the recording and some other links of the presentation slides as well. There's, not sure if you're monitoring the chat, but there's a couple of other questions. One of them is asking if any UN agencies use global disposal services in Bangladesh through UNHCR.
No, we don't. Bangladesh is one of the operations where we normally redeploy our vehicles back to the hub. And this is because we're not allowed to sell our vehicles in the country. So Bangladesh is one of those countries where we're not allowed to sell in country.
Okay. And Anatoly is asking what other services are available within the Global Assets Management Solutions, other than disposal, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, we're currently developing AV inspections and AV destructions, but this is something that, because of the specificity and the very, very how do you call it? If it's not the same manufacturer of AV, it becomes very sensitive to perform an inspection. So this is something we do not yet offer externally. So this is currently only for our own vehicles, but we do provide advice when it comes to AV destruction. And some other agencies might have different kind of practice, but in UNHCR, our AVs, we never donate our AVs. And whenever we need to dispose of an AV that is no longer operational and is beyond salvation, we have protocols and we have SOPs for the destruction, because these vehicles need to have a very well documented destruction process. So these are some of the things we can help in the destruction process, or at least provide some guidance. We have close to 400 AVs around the world. So we do have identified some suppliers that can destroy this vehicle. So this we can also help you with. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Israel. I think we put the emails of the contact as well, so you can keep reaching out. And I'm not sure if you have any last words before we close off for now. And also welcome any operations management teams that would like to have more information to reach out and ask for that if you require a specific meeting or focus webinar for your region or for your country. Any final words from your side, Sanya or Israel?
Sanya?
We are looking forward to the future cooperation. Let us know if we can help you with some disposals, and let's hope we can find the best solution.
Yeah. This is something we started doing about 11 or 15 auctions for other agencies, and we're now 5 times full, 6 times full. So we're up to 50 auctions for other agencies. So this is something that has proven also with the help of Diego and the team in New York. It has proven to be a service that is required. The agencies are definitely appreciating to have someone to turn to. And I think this is something that is definitely for the benefit of the UN family.
Perfect, and thank you so much for offering your time and the expertise. And we look forward to continue collaboration. We put the link for the feedback form. If you can just, it takes about a minute. Just let us know how we did. How we can
Diego,
improve.
do you mind? I don't know if you have the fresh link of the article that you did during the last presentation last year. Do you have that article at hand?
Do you mean the practice note?
No. The one that they did an article and it was published in.
Right.
You remember that one?
I do. It's from the newsletter, from the efficiency agenda.
Yeah.
And it's called the Connect newsletter. I will share the link in the follow-up email.
Yeah, and I think, I don't remember the title of the article, but it was, I saw it published in LinkedIn. Let me see if I'll put it here on I'll put it in the comments as well, because I think it was a good initiative from your side to have that article published.
Okay.
But if you
Perfect.
can reshare it, that would be good, Diego.
I will. And thank you everyone for joining. Since we are out of time, and if it's okay with everyone, we'll say goodbye and stay connected and stay available for any support that you may require. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day all. Bye.
Bye.